I never thought I'd find myself grateful for environmental protection laws. For years, I'd grumbled about the red tape, the fines, the endless regulations that seemed designed to make life harder for regular folks like me. But that was before Karen Mitchell, the platinum blonde tyrant of the Oakwood States Homeowners Association, declared war on my backyard pool. Looking back, the warning signs were there. I just didn't see them until it was too late. It all started last spring with a small decorative fountain. I'd installed it next to my pool, a modest thing, barely 3 feet tall and fully portable. I'd always taken pride in my backyard, a little suburban oasis with crystal clear pool, neatly trimmed shrubs, and a cozy patio where I could unwind after a long day. The fountain was just a whimsical touch, something to make the space feel a bit more serene. According to the HOA bylaws, permanent water features required approval, but portable ones under 3 feet, they were exempt. Or so I thought. That was my first mistake. The day after I set it up, my inbox pinged with an email from Karen. The subject line read, "Urgent. Unauthorized water feature violation," in bold, screaming capitals. I opened it to find a novella of accusations. Karen had cited Section 7.3.3 of the Community Guidelines in excruciating detail, claiming my fountain was a blight on the neighborhood. She demanded I remove it immediately or face a $50 daily fine. I rubbed my temples, muttering to myself, I could have sworn portable features under 3 feet were exempt. I pulled up the bylaws on my laptop, and sure enough, there it was in black and white. Confident, I fired off a reply with a screenshot of the rule, thinking that'd be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, there she was, Karen Mitchell, standing on my doorstep like a general ready to storm the gates. Her platinum bob was perfectly styled, her beige cardigan pristine, her arms crossed tight over her chest. "Good morning, Mr. Davis," she said, her voice clipped, her smile so tight it didn't even graze her eyes. "I'm here to discuss your continued violation." "There's no violation, Karen," I replied, keeping my tone even as I pulled up the email on my phone. "Portable water features under 3 feet are exempt. I sent you the proof." Her smile tightened further, like a rubber band about to snap. That exemption was removed at last month's meeting. Perhaps if you'd attended, you'd know that. Her tone dripped with condescension. I frowned. The updated bylaws haven't been distributed yet. You can't enforce rules no one's been told about. Her face flushed a faint pink, but she didn't back down. "Well, consider yourself informed now. You have 48 hours to remove it or submit a proper application." Before I could argue, she turned on her heel and marched off, her beige flats clicking against the pavement. Rather than pick a fight, I decided to play nice. Karen had been HOA president for 3 years, and in that time, our quiet little neighborhood had morphed into her personal fiefdom. She clearly had too much time on her hands, and I didn't want to give her more ammunition. That evening, I filled out the application, photos, dimensions, a detailed description, and hit submit. 3 days later, it came back, denied. No explanation, no feedback, just a curt application rejected in my inbox. That was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Karen turned my backyard into her personal battlefield. I strung up some solar-powered lights around the pool, soft, warm ones, nothing garish. She claimed they were too bright and violated light pollution rules. I put up a privacy screen on one side of the yard to block the view from Tom's nosy deck next door. She measured it with a ruler and declared a half an inch too tall. Every tweak I made, she found a reason to object. It wasn't about the rules anymore. It was personal. I should have seen it coming. Karen had a reputation. Tom, my neighbor across the street, had warned me once over beers at a barbecue. She's been insufferable since her divorce. Power trip doesn't even cover it. But I'd brushed it off. How bad could it get over a fountain? Bad, it turned out. The real escalation came when I decided to host a pool party for my niece's birthday. It was a small affair, 8 kids, 5 adults, a Saturday afternoon of splashing and cake. I sent a courtesy email to my immediate neighbors, letting them know about the noise and inviting them to stop by if they wanted. I figured it was a neighborly thing to do. Big mistake. Friday evening, As I was inflating pool floats and setting out streamers, a formal notice arrived from the HOA. Gatherings of more than 10 people require approval at least 2 weeks in advance, it read. I did the math. 13 people total. Too late to cancel. I'd already bought food, decorations, and party favors. So I went ahead, taking extra care to keep the music low, the kids in check, and the whole thing wrapped up by 7 p.m. It was a hit. My niece beamed, the kids laughed, and a few neighbors even popped by for cake. No complaints, no drama. Or so I thought. Monday morning, I woke up to a violation, notice taped to my front door. 3 infractions: exceeding the guest limit, excessive noise pollution, and allowing unsupervised minors in the pool area. Fine, $300. I stared at the paper, my coffee going cold in my hand. Unsupervised minors? Every kid had a parent watching them like a hawk. Excessive noise? We'd barely turned the Bluetooth speaker above a whisper. This was ridiculous. I decided to fight it at the next HOA meeting. Standing in front of the board, I laid out my case. The kids were supervised. The neighbors were fine with it. Some even joined us. Karen sat at the head of the table, her lips pursed, her manicured nails tapping the wood. Rules are rules, Mr. Davis, she said, waving a hand dismissively. The board has already voted. I glanced at the other members, Tom included, all avoiding my gaze. Karen ruled the roost, and no one dared cross her. As I left the meeting, Tom caught up with me in the parking lot. Don't take it personally, he whispered. She's been like this since the divorce. It's not about you. Maybe not, but it sure felt personal. I paid the fine, but I wasn't about to let her steamroll me anymore. If Karen wanted to play games, I'd play too, by the actual rules, not her warped interpretations. For the next 2 weeks, I turned into a one-man HOA detective. I walked the neighborhood with a notepad, documenting every violation I could find, especially on Karen's property. Her fence was the wrong shade of beige, Section 4.2.1. Approved colors only. Her garden gnomes exceeded the limit on decorative items, Section 6.8. No more than 5. Her trash can sat out front 2 days past collection, Section 9.1. Concealed except on pickup day. I compiled it all into a report, attached photos, and emailed it to the HOA board. CZNG every homeowner in Oakwood Estates. Karen was livid. At the next meeting, she stood up, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. In light of recent accusations, she announced, glaring at me, I'll be conducting thorough inspections of all properties to ensure compliance. When my turn came, she spent 2 hours in my yard, measuring, photographing, scribbling notes. She couldn't pin anything on me, but that didn't stop her from trying. Then came the breaking point. A big package arrived from my home office. Specialized equipment packed with hundreds of polystyrene packing peanuts. I swept them into garbage bags, planning to drop them at a recycling center that weekend, and stashed the bags in my garage. That Thursday, I left town for a 3-day business trip, double-checking my yard for compliance before I went. The last thing I needed was another fine. I should have known Karen wouldn't let it slide. When my flight landed Sunday night, my phone lit up 17 missed calls, over 30 texts. Heart pounding. I called Sarah, my next-door neighbor, as I grabbed my luggage. Oh my God, Mark, you won't believe it, she said, her voice frantic. Karen went into your backyard while you were gone and dumped something in your pool. It's a total mess. She did what? I nearly dropped the phone. How'd she even get in? She claimed she saw a potential hazard and was doing an emergency inspection. A few of us saw her hauling bags from your garage to the pool. Next thing we know, it's full of those white foam peanut things. She said you left them out as an eyesore, and she was fixing it. I couldn't breathe. She broke into my garage and trashed my pool? That's not an HOA issue, that's a crime. It gets worse, Sarah said. Someone called the Environmental Protection Agency. Those peanuts are polystyrene, hazardous when they break down in water. An inspector came out yesterday and took samples. They're saying it's a serious violation. I raced home, my stomach churning. There was my once pristine pool, now a cloudy swamp of half-dissolved packing peanuts. Years of maintenance, ruined. The filter system couldn't handle this. It was a disaster. Monday morning, I called the local EPA office. They told me an investigation was underway and asked me to come in at their drab government building. I met Richard Jensen, a stern-faced inspector with a clipboard. "Mr. Davis," he said, his tone grave, "we're looking at fines up to $50,000 for intentional disposal of expanded polystyrene in a water feature that could drain into the watershed." "I didn't do this," I said, my voice shaking. "The HOA president broke into my property while I was out of town and dumped those peanuts in my pool. I have witnesses." Jensen raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation. Got any proof?" I did. Better than witnesses. After some petty vandalism in the neighborhood last year, I'd installed security cameras around my house. I pulled out my phone and played the footage. Karen, clear as day, using an HOA master key to enter my garage, dragging out the bags, and dumping the peanuts into my pool. She even paused to snap photos, probably to document her fix. Jensen's jaw tightened as he watched. "This is highly unusual," he said, his voice measured. "I'll need a copy of that footage." I handed over the video, along with witness statements from Sarah and others, plus every email and notice documenting Karen's harassment. Within days, the investigation flipped. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from the EPA. Karen Mitchell was solely responsible for the illegal dumping. She'd be fined $50,000 and ordered to pay $12,000 for a professional cleanup and restoration of my pool. But it didn't end there. When the HOA board caught wind of Karen's stunt and the massive fine, they called an emergency meeting. Karen tried to spin it, claiming she'd acted in her official capacity to address a violation. The vice president, a quiet guy named Ed, shut her down. "The bylaws don't authorize breaking into private property or disposing of a homeowner's possessions," he said. "Your actions expose the association to liability." The vote was unanimous. Karen was out, effective immediately. Her downfall snowballed. Her real estate brokerage put her on administrative leave pending an ethics investigation. Turns out breaking into someone's garage and causing environmental damage didn't sit well with their standards. At the meeting where she was ousted, Karen stormed out, her face red with fury. She stopped just long enough to glare at me, tears welling in her eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You've ruined everything I've worked for." She stumbled as she shoved through the door, the weight of the $50,000 fine and her shattered reputation finally hitting her. For me, it was over. The EPA dropped all charges against me. A cleanup crew drained my pool, scrubbed it clean and refilled it, good as new, courtesy of Karen's checkbook. The HOA board sent an apology letter, promising to revise their processes. A few neighbors even stopped by with beers, toasting to the end of Karen's reign. Oakwood Estates settled back into its quiet rhythm. Karen's house went up for sale a month later. She couldn't afford to stay, not with the fines and the legal fees piling up. I heard she moved to an apartment downtown, her real estate license in limbo. As for me, I kept the fountain, the lights, the privacy screen, all of it. No one's dared to complain since. Sitting by my pool one evening, the water sparkling under the string lights, I couldn't help but smile. Karen had tried to bury me, but she dug her own grave instead. And those environmental laws I'd once cursed, they turned out to be my saving grace. Funny how life works sometimes.